Hey everyone, so this is part three in our Unity tutorial series, and we're basically going to talk about sound. So in our last tutorial, we took a look at how to set up a basic Unity project, and we created this new Unity project and put it on our desktop, and we created this scene called Level 1 Unity. And I'm going to go back to that. I'm going to go over to Unity, and I can see that when I zoom back on my project here, and by the way, on trackpad I'm using two fingers to kind of zoom back. On a 3-button mouse with a scroll wheel, I can use the scroll wheel to sort of zoom in and out. So if you remember, I have a third-person controller, that character. I also have a plane, which is this long strip here. It's like a landing strip almost. And then I have this cube here at one end and a sphere at the other end. And this tutorial is going to talk about, well, how does audio fit into all of this? Well, what you can do is you can add an audio source, or basically it's like a speaker, to any object in the world. And so that's what we're going to do. So I'm going to take our, but first, we do need to import some music or audio into our project. And so that's what I want to do first. I want to kind of go to our assets folder and put some music in it. Now, I can drag and drop from the desktop into here, or I can go directly to the desktop in my Finder. And here's my assets folder, which is cool. And remember, it added, when I imported assets, it added the editor folder for me in the standard assets folder. But I can put any kind of folder that I want into this folder. So I'm going to drag in my music. And inside my music folder, I have 3 WAV files in here. 3 WAV files that I'm working on for another project. They're kind of in demo form right now. No live instruments or anything on them. But I'm going to use those for my current small little game. And I have my music folder. And when I go back to Unity, Unity is going to look at that folder and then give me this spinning rainbow ball and then import those assets into my project. It kind of has to analyze them. In fact, not only does it have to analyze them, it also has to make temporary files that will actually go into the build of our game. This means that we'll temporarily sort of compress those files in whatever its compression ratio is. We'll talk about that in a minute. When I open up my music folder now, I can see that I have 3 music files inside. And when I click on each one of these, I can play it down here by just pressing this. That's pretty nice. Up here in the settings, you can actually see what it's doing. Right now, the load type, there are 3 options. One, decompress unload. That means when the game starts, decompress the whole thing, unload. Compressed in memory, which is a little bit more CPU heavy because when I'm playing the game, it has to decompress it in order to play it, so the CPU has to work a little bit harder. Or streaming, that means that it's loading it directly off disk and playing it. Now for music, streaming is usually a good option. Not always the case, but usually. So I'm going to go streaming, and then the quality here right now is set at 100%. And I can change that to say 50%. It's Ogg Vorbis is the current compression format. I have a couple of different options. PCM, which is raw uncompressed, ADPCM, which is compressed but it sounds pretty lousy, and Vorbis, which is similar to MP3, and that sounds pretty good actually. So I'm going to stick with that. And then I'm going to apply it, and you can see that the original size is 12.8 megabytes. The imported size now, when it's Ogg Vorbis, is 1.1. So basically, I compress it to about 10% of what it was originally at. Now, I want to do those to all my assets, so what I can do is kind of select all 3, change the compression ratio to 50, and change them all to streaming, and hit apply. And then I can set up my music assets. Now, this is really project dependent. If I'm working on an iPhone game, I may need to have much smaller files. I might not be able to stream them. These are all things that you have to sort of take into account and work with your development team to figure out. Once you've done that, actually, when I play these back now, when I play Walden Winter, it will actually play back the Ogg Vorbis file because it's done the compression in the background for me. So now when I play it, we're going to hear Ogg Vorbis 50% quality. we've lost a little bit of stereo imaging. It's has a little bit more bite to it, but it's okay, for now at least. All right, so that's the basics of importing sounds in my project. And when I go back to my hard disk here, into my music folder, I'll still see these. There are some invisible files in this folder which represent the compressed versions. Don't have to worry about any of that. Unity is taking care of all that in the background so that you don't have to, which is cool. So when I go back to Unity, what I'm going to do first is I'm going to set up basically a sound source on this sphere that I've created. In order to do that, you go up to the component menu, and then you want to add an audio source to that object. And what it did over here is you could see that it added a whole new component with a bunch of settings right here for me, which is kind of cool. So what I'm going to do is pick the audio clip. In order to do that, I just double click here, actually on the little circle, and I can see all the audio pieces in my project, and I'm going to pick Walden Winter. And you can see now the audio clip is Walden Winter. The audio output has to do with mixers, and we're going to get into mixers in a future tutorial, so don't worry about that. We are going to play on awake. That means when the game becomes alive, when it first starts up and it starts rendering, it's going to actually start to play. And then we're going to loop the file. And then lastly, we are going to choose whether it's 2D or 3D. And I'm going to choose a 3D sound because I want to show you how 3D sounds work in the world. If I leave it as 2D, it will feel like underscore, but I just want to show you what 3D sounds like. The other thing I'm going to do is there is another setting which has to do with Doppler, and I'm going to turn Doppler off. Doppler is the effect of when a sound is going past you at a high rate of speed. Say you're in a car, or actually say you're at a train stop and a train goes by you, and the pitch of the ringing of the train will actually start to drop as it flies by you, right? That's called Doppler shift, and it's really common in, say, racing games. But in a game like this, I don't need any Doppler shift, so I'm turning that to 0. So now when I play my game, and here I am in the middle, and I'm going to look towards my sphere, I can hear it a little bit in the background, but not very much. I'm going to have to run down to it because it's basically a sound that's in 3D space. And when I run down here and I get really close, then I can hear it really well. And then when I turn around, you can hear it pan between the different speakers. So I'm placing it in the 3D world itself. And as I run towards the other side, as I run towards the cube, we'll hear it fade away. And then we'll hear, eventually we'll hear nothing. In fact, the easiest way to do that is sort of run off the edge here, and eventually the music's going to die out. Now, if I look back at my audio source, the inspect settings for that, I can see that the maximum distance right now is 500 meters. So the minimum distance is 1, and it has a logarithmic roll-off. So as I move away from it, the sound dissipates. The volume goes down in a logarithmic, as a logarithmic curve. I could change that curve to linear if I want, and I can change the distance to, say, 10 meters. So now it's a much smaller roll-off, and it's linear instead. Actually, I'm going to change it to 5 meters, like this. We actually can see the range of it by the outline here. So if I change this to, say, 3, to 4, to 5, each one of those is readjusting the size of where I'm going to hear it, which is cool. So now I'm going to go over to my cube, and I'm going to leave it on, by the way, I'm going to leave that one on, I'm going to leave the sphere, so the sphere distance, the maximum distance here, will be 5 meters. And then my cube, I'm going to do a similar thing. I'm going to add a component. Now, before I showed up here, I added a component this way. But there's another way to add a component to the sphere. Double click on it, then add a component, audio source. I'm going to pick a new audio clip using the little circle icon. And I'm going to pick Walden Open. I'm going to play this on Awake and loop it, turn off the Doppler shift, and also turn on the 3D. So as I walk down to this sphere, I should be able to hear my piece of music once I get within 5 meters. And when I go to the other side, I'm going to hear my other piece of music. Now, the music started right at the beginning of when I started the game, or when I press play. So it actually will start in the middle of the piece because it's playing all this time. One of the cool things about this is if you look in the lower right-hand corner, you can see the listener come closer, and then the volume start to fade up. And then as I back away, actually, you can't back away that easily, apparently. You have to fully turn around. You can actually see that listener come in to view, so you can change the curve if you need to. So that's how you place sounds into Unity. In the next tutorial, it will be a very short one, how to export this as a game, like an application that you could give your girlfriend or your mom or whoever. So that's kind of the next tutorial that's coming up. Thanks for listening.